Hey, what's up, guys? Daily here from Frag Nation, and today we have the second week of the America's Army Proving Ground podcasts. We are joined, as always, by Tots and Grubber, and we have another special guest roster on here today. He's a level designer. Welcome to the podcast. I would just like to start out by saying that there was some confusion in the last podcast that, this is not really, these aren't interviews. These aren't Q&A sessions. This is really just a more relaxed sit down, talk with some of the game developers about some of the questions that we're seeing on the forums because, as we stated in the last podcast, it's really impossible to respond to every single solitary person on there. So with something like this, we can respond to a more broader audience. We're able to talk to multiple different people at one time rather than have to sit down and type out to 500 different people our answers and explanations on things. So that's what this is, guys. And without further ado, welcome, team. How's everybody doing today?
Doing
Hey,
good.
man.
Yeah, man, they're great.
Doing well. How are you, Daly? How are
I'm
you?
I'm hanging in there. I don't know if you can tell, but I just got over a cold. My voice sounds like crap. So I really hope
I didn't
everybody
want to mention
I hope everybody can deal with that. Usually I sound like an angel, but
it. Sure.
today I sound like a sick angel. In any case, since we have a level designer in here today, let's talk some level stuff. We had some great pre cast talk going on, and I'd kind of like to pick up on one of the topics about the two new maps that are coming out. Might as well start the interview off or the podcast off with something
Wait.
relative.
Oh,
What is?
well,
What is that?
Uh
Did you hear
oh.
that? Oh,
uh,
it's Waffle Copter.
Oh no, it's
The
Waffle.
Waffle Copter
little bit.
just showed up.
He just showed up at the ideal time too, because
Oh.
he's actually been working on these two new maps while I've been tied up on shoot houses and things like that. So
hello,
Anybody-
Daily.
Hey, how's it going? I've got to say that was the least staged introduction I've ever seen in my life. I can't believe you just happened to walk by. Really glad, that you were passing by the hallway.
I just flew in here. I could feel it. I was like, there's questions being asked about the levels that I helped make.
Right.
Yeah. These terrible maps that we was made by Waffle Copter.
he doesn't mean that. Played them, they're fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're okay.
It just would have been a little more epic if we had like Flight of the Bumblebees.
That's true.
Oh.
Well, that totally wouldn't match up Waffle Copter. So
Yeah, right. well, yeah, that's the one. I like bumblebees. Whatever. It's all good.
Nice.
Let's start off by then. We'll ask you these questions then, and we'll let Rasta answer some of the other ones later on. But we've got some questions on the forums about these two new maps. I guess we've had some people that have tested them before or have seen them prior to this release, and they say they're the most beautiful maps ever made so far for this game, but they were lacking some optimization. What's been done since people have first put their hands on them until now?
Well, I can absolutely attest that the art team is spent the last 2-3 weeks and just absolutely optimized as much as they can the two maps. They are absolutely concerned with both frame rate, draw calls, all of the optimization that both your CPU and video card
Right.
um, is able to churn out. We do have in the studio different levels of machines. They're not all exactly the same build as well, so we're able to at least test on a variety of machines. So
Right.
as you would see out there in the wild as well.
So the random dual core laying around somebody's using doesn't really like using that workstation. Those I gotta tell you, man. I'm on an i7 and I've got a pretty good graphics card, and crank this game up on high, and it's really gonna put that thing to work. So I mean, the level of detail that goes into some of these, I know is very good. But I also know it works on my buddy's machine, who it's got like a under 2.0 gigahertz processor. So I mean, the varying frame rates and stuff, I'm sure just goes map to map. And both of these maps being outside, I think people just had some concern with. It seems to be the worst on outside maps where you get that frame lag and that frame drop.
Right, and I think what they were experiencing as well was, we like to push the levels up to a certain level of quality, and then optimize from that level. So in case we have to start taking things out, we can, but we prefer not to. So we'd rather push it to that level and then kind of pull it back and then optimize it. I think they were just playing on an unoptimized versions of the map.
And
Right.
outdoor maps, it makes sense that you're going to have more issues there just because you have a lot more background stuff. So, I mean, you want the play space to be really high quality, but then you have all this other background detail to take care of too, whereas like something like Redline, I mean, it's just play space pretty much. So you can put a lot more of the detail in there without having to worry about all that background stuff.
Moving back into these new maps, tell us what makes these maps really unique. We spoke in an interview a while ago with, I believe Nikolai was there and somebody else, but
Oh, it was me.
it was you? Okay, perfect. Yeah, we spoke in the interview about some of the new ways that this map was versatile, but now that we're getting closer to the launch, can you give us some more details on, what really makes, these two maps different and kind of stand out?
I'm trying to think of there's nothing individually is coming out. I know that I guess there's a lot of little details I come
Right.
to mind. I
And
guess
that's
first
really
foremost-
what makes the map, man. I mean, obviously the maps have to stay consistent. We spoke about that before. That's what we're interested in is what are these little details that are going to make that map memorable? Like Redline, for example, is memorable because you have the different, you have an upper level, a lower level, a middle level, and you just didn't have that with some of the other maps that were out there. So what are those kind of little unique features that are different now?
I guess from an art side of things, it's not a training map. It feels like people have been living there. Feels like people have are still living there. As far as like a design aspect of it, we really tried to look at both C4 and the take and hold game types and develop a map within on a 12v12 level that would support that even further.
Right.
And I think a couple of things you'll notice. If you look at Cold Front, obviously we got some snow going on there.
Yes.
I think people are going to be excited to see that. It's not like over the top or anything, but you got a light dusting, you got some snow particles going on. It's got a good feel to it.
Just in time for summer.
Now, if anybody's seen that M24 video that went out
Yes.
yesterday, I think,
With your
you'll
incredibly
notice that,
elite sniper.
that was Delta Kilo in that video, and you can tell that he likes him some rooftops. And slums, you can get on some rooftops. You get a lot of high ground areas. You're walking from rooftop to rooftop and things like that in certain areas. So that's something you haven't really seen in any of the other maps at this point. It's kind of unique.
Yes, definitely.
People are going to enjoy doing that as well.
Yeah, Delta Kilo actually has a whole 500 gigabyte hard drive full of videos of him shooting people.
Yeah, he will email
quite a
out.
library to pull from.
Yeah, he will email out the play of the day
Yeah.
sometimes after play tests, and they're always of him killing somebody. So,
In fact, he was really disappointed when we released Shoot Houses that we did not have an M24 ready to go.
I bet.
yeah, it's coming though. It's coming.
Yeah, it's
Right.
definitely coming. But as far as Cold Front goes, like play space and stuff like that, a different feel that I get from these is that we kind of had this Cold Front in particular has this main play space, and then there's this sneaky side route that kind of have to respect. It's got that flank, but you don't always really want to go. You don't want to necessarily send a full force there.
It's weird though, because like you say, sneaky side, right? It's right in your face, right?
It
And you
is,
see it
it's
there.
true,
It's a main
yeah.
route, but it's just there's so much focus on the
From the other routes,
on the
right?
tack spawn. The left side of the map sees so much play
Yeah.
that you can go to the right side and be successful, and usually if you can make a breakthrough on that side, it's going to help your team out a lot. But
Yeah.
the majority of the players tend to go kind of towards the main courtyard area, so it does have a feel like it's weighted to one side of the map over the other.
But you have to respect that other side of the map.
Or you're-
Because if somebody sneaks through there, you're done.
I feel like map control is a lot more important on Cold Front than a lot
Yeah.
of our other maps. If you're not diligent on watching all of the different angles, you're done. I mean, they're all behind you and it's over.
Yeah.
And I know we've got flanking on the training maps, but not to this degree. It's
Right. Like in
much more-
the training map, it's more route specific. It's kind of laid
Yeah.
out with you, and you have the sign that says sniper route this way or main route that way. Are we going to see more house to house engagements?
I sure hope so.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because you say that we actually went into Cold Front and Slum. So the goal early on is we usually put out one major map and update. We really wanted to get two out this time. So to do that, we we were looking at a couple of things, and one was we wanted to share some assets between the two, so we didn't have to completely create new assets, take some of the load off the art team. We also wanted to use less interiors and things like that because of how much more work those take, right? But I think as a side product of that, the interiors we do have all feel unique. They're not made out of set pieces because there's only like 3 or 4 of them in a map. The art team was really able to go in there and give them their own look and feel and really devote
make
a
it
lot
feel
of
like
time
it's somebody's house or an actual workspace, something like that.
Yeah. So the video may be a bit misleading in the fact that you're still spending most of the time outside, but the interior spaces that you are in are going to feel good and unique and interesting.
Yeah, they definitely do.
And that was kind of a goal for this time. So moving forward, there could certainly be maps focused more on interior spaces.
Of course.
There's also a bit of a balancing act you have to perform. Like if it's nothing but interior spaces, like it could very easily get into the realm of confusion for the player, especially as Roster's saying, they all start looking and trending the same way. Whereas in Coldfront and in Slums, the 2 new maps, because they're focused around the objectives themselves, it's easier to say, hey, I'm going to the Y objective, I'm going to that building, I'm going to the garage, or I'm going to the barn, or etc. Whereas if it was nothing but like modular houses upon houses upon houses, you say, oh, I'm in house number 23, the blue one.
Right.
That's a good point you make too. With the interiors that we have and the fact that Art was able to really go through and make them feel unique, they do serve as some of our major landmarks on the map now. So not only you get to go in there and experience them, and there's going to be a lot going on there, like Barn on Slums, on Coldfront. My goodness, that place is a murder fest. But so there's a lot going on there. There's a lot to make them exciting, but they're also unique enough that you're able to use them in communication and calling out key points and things like that.
Exactly. We'll move on. The next question, and we spoke this a little bit offline, is user-made maps. This question comes from Wolverine, one of our talented user map creators. He says, user-made maps, what's up with them? Somebody here said that they know what he's talking about. So what is he talking about? Do we have more assets coming in maybe for user-made maps? Do we have fixes coming out for some of the crashes people are having? What's the general feel with user-made maps right now?
They're okay. Yeah, next question. No,
There's no Coldfront, right?
Yeah, no. So I assume what he's getting at is like the fact that the thing's been kind of buggy since the Shoot House release, and Asari, our UMM people, they went and got married, and kids these days when they get married.
Yeah, there was actually a week.
They don't want to work.
There was actually a week where pretty much the entire team working on that side of things was not in the office. So,
okay.
I mean, they're working hard on getting fixes. I've seen a lot of activity on our bug tracking software.
Yeah, we're trying to get a
like
lot
that.
of.
Yeah.
They're quickly trying to get stuff in for RFI 3, which is like down to the wire at this point. So.
But yes, new assets, absolutely. Slums and Coldfront are chock full of new assets, almost entirely new assets. You'll be able to grab all that stuff. I don't know how much of it is getting pulled into the
the creator.
The basic mission editor, as far as like being able to go into the menus and select them, but open those bad boys up in full editor and copy and paste them over to your map. Absolutely, please do that. They're good assets to build with. So
also on UMMs, I saw in the forum somebody was asking about the role stuff and that sort of stuff, and just wanted to let them know like. There will be role control. Roster will probably do a video on it.
Yeah, well, it's fairly simple to set up if you know where to look for it and find it, and you're careful not to break it. But we'll definitely do a tutorial to make sure that's a little easier for people to handle.
Well, and one thing I know that Wolverine was wondering, I've seen it elsewhere too. People are wondering, some of these maps are so good, like Operation Caesar. Why are they not in official rotation? I mean, yes, we have user-made map servers, and sometimes they're played, sometimes they're not. There's private guys hosting them. I don't have a firm answer yet, but this is something we're looking at. Are there maps that are good enough to maybe be polished up by us and put in rotation? Maybe. Do we have time? Can we do it? Maybe. I mean, it's something that's definitely being talked about a lot here. So, we didn't just put this out and just leave it. We want to integrate it more and more. It's a process. The user maps is still really fresh.
Yeah.
And while there's a lot of neat maps, there's not that many complete maps that are really done and really tested. And so it's just going to be a process of time, but that does answer a lot of what I've seen lately. But until then, just get on the user map server, guys. My goodness, I've got like 4 of them. What's wrong with you? Get on.
Get them, Tots. Get them.
We spoke also offline about Snake Plane. This was one question that kind of caught my eye, and I know we talked about it a little bit, and it was creating some good discussion, so I wanted to bring it up here. Snake Plane, obviously, some people haven't played it. I myself never played it, but I did some research into it because I was like, what is this guy talking about? Is there ever going to be a map as big as Snake Plane? And apparently, I'll put a picture in the video right here of what Snake Plane actually looks like, and it's a big, giant map. It's a big hill, mountainous area with a river running through it and objectives on far sides. What do you guys really like when you're making a map? How big is too big? When you have 12v12, you're talking about 24 people playing, on maps like, we'll say Three Kings, for example. That map is right at the point where it's just big enough for 12 people. You have a lot of good contact areas and stuff like that. Is there anything stopping you guys going bigger? Is it assets? Is it performance? What is stopping you from creating like a map that's like 5 city blocks? How does that work?
To start real fast, I would say the first thing that comes to mind as far as like the limit on size is when it starts feeling like you need like a bike or a vehicle of some kind to get to the other side of the map.
Need my tactical bike right now.
How big is too big? I mean, I don't think we really have a set standard, right? I think obviously most people would say we're kind of on the small side right now. We've definitely been hearing that feedback. But each release we've recently, we're trying to get a little bit bigger on the map size, Right. I think you're going to see that trend going forward. These 2 maps are Cold Front and Slums are certainly bigger, but I don't think you're going to see us make a huge jump to like the size of Snake Plane at any time in the near future.
Okay.
I mean, that's a pretty massive jump forward.
Right.
I mean, to be honest with you, every single time I'm pretty notorious. Every single time that I come up with a new white box idea, the art team always is giving me a tough time because they say I keep making bigger and bigger maps, and they have to art them all. So it's definitely a balancing act. Now, if you look at Snake Plane, right? Obviously they're able to do it in the past. We could do it now.
Right.
It doesn't have a lot of that detail in there, though.
No,
right?
it's a lot of plains, a lot of mountains, river.
Yeah, emphasis on the plane on Snake Plane, right?
So exactly.
We could do that, right? And we couldn't make it as rich of a play space though. So where's that balance at? I think, and we kind of like the rate of engagements, I guess. Spend a little bit of time early on getting in position and stuff like that, but we don't want you to be spending 2 minutes before you get into combat.
Right.
We don't want to spread the players out too much, and we're pretty happy with our time limit settings right now. Right now, You can play maps comfortably in our time limit settings. We don't want to get to a point where every round's coming down to the wire and you're waiting on that one dude who got lost 4 minutes ago.
Right. So what I'm kind of taking away from this, just kind of on the non-developer side, is when you get into these bigger maps like Snake Plane and stuff like that, with the game that we have now, you really couldn't be done without putting revives in or respawns in, and that's just not something that you guys are wanting to do, and I don't blame you for that, because that kind of what makes this game unique, and adds that teamwork aspect where you have to be revived by a teammate in order to come back. So, I mean, obviously you've spoken, about all these other little tiny issues and things like that, but what I'm catching, and correct me if I'm wrong, and feel free to tell me I'm wrong, because I'm wrong about a lot of things, but it seems like that could be like the bigger underlying reason that, it's because we don't want to put respawns in here.
Yeah, well, and I think Snake Plane could work without respawn. And I mean, it was in AA2. I don't remember playing it really back when I was playing AA2, but it.
Granted, that game could last like 30 minutes, at a time.
Yeah. So So if we put it in 12 on 12, right? I mean, yeah. How quick can you cover that space? How long does a round timer need to be? And do people really want to sit around for that?
Yeah, you might have that one guy just off nowhere.
Put it on the hardcore servers. Let them play with it.
Yeah. The M24, you have Delta Kilo sniping halfway.
There you go.
Delta's in there. Delta just wants all M24.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of consideration going in. Yeah, I'm sure I'm sure there's a group of people out there that love playing that map back in the day, or otherwise they wouldn't be bringing it up, right? But
right.
I don't think going in that direction right now is something that the community at large is going to really be glad that we spend a lot of time and resources on that experience necessarily.
Okay.
Especially when the artists could work on the netcode.
But
Wow.
I feel like while we're at it, you like an old map, you got an editor. Bring it in. A lot of guys are making really good old maps again. So, I mean, the community could source this. You want it, make it. You know.
And to be fair, if you wanted to make Snake Plane, go for it. If you start getting, if you start having performance issues, I'm pretty sure we could spend a little bit of time running around looking at some numbers and maybe getting some suggestions on things you can do to improve it.
Well, and there's lots of guys like Wolverine, like Delta Force, who really have studied into this, and they'll jump on maps that you're making and help you and teach you, and
I don't want people to think that maps that size are an impossible task for performance reasons. That doesn't necessarily have to be the case. Get in there and give it a go. I mean, you can get something like that set up with just doing a lot of terrain manipulation for about 80% of your work. See how it plays, and then start making modifications on top of that.
One thing I kind of wanted to talk about, I kind of mentioned it on because you put up all those cold front, before and after, and before and after, and I kind of wanted to get into that a little bit because I thought that was kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, so do I. That's why I was checking with the time.
You could see the play spaces, but some of the feeling of those actually changed, especially in slums. Slums actually started off HVT. It was a VIP map at one point.
Yep.
And then we turned it, and it was tons of rooftops.
Oh my.
Everything was, you could get on every roof pretty much. And that
I was a bit overzealous with my rooftop.
But I mean, there's still a lot of that in slums. There's still a lot of that feel of the rooftops. You will, if you play with Delta, he will be on the roof somewhere.
Yeah,
of course. Rooftops are definitely a power position.
Get him a rooftop camo.
They're power position, but there's not so many. You know where they're going to be.
Once you learn them, then they're not as powerful, but they're still it's a situation where once one person dies, if they call it out, the guy on the roof's generally dead pretty quick after that.
Right.
Yeah.
To touch what you were talking about the screenshots, I thought it was really cool to kind of see the before and afters because I mean it's been a while. So we're like, wow.
Yeah. There was tons of them on there.
But and it seemed that the people who have seen it had positive reception to that as well.
Right.
So a cool thing that I'm doing so I'm currently working on a BDX. So we right now we're focused on giving you 2 flows. We kind of feel like we're to the point where we've got. So when we first came out, we had a ton of BDXs and only a few flows. We've been trying to catch up. I think we've caught up.
Right.
We've neglected BDXs a bit lately. So the next major update, you should expect to see 2 BDXs because that's kind of what we're looking into right now. But with the BDX I'm working on right now, Intercept, which going back to size, it is going to be a bit bigger than a lot of the BDXs you're used to.
It can easily support 8 players.
Oh yeah. Dimension-wise, you're looking at around 6,000 UU long by 4,000 UU wide. Which, if you want to hop in the editor and kind of measure that out, feel free. You're looking about.
It's like hospital sports.
My brain totally works in UU.
Well, yeah, I know. I mean, I can do the conversion. I mean, you're looking at I don't know, 120 meters
off the top of his head right here.
Okay.
There's no calculator.
Something like that.
Yeah, right.
It gets weird because I
just Google it. Just Google UUs right now if you're watching the video and just that's.
Yeah, it's weird because I can give you distances in meters and things like that, but it's weird the way your brain works. It sounds shorter than it feels in game. There's a lot of. The M14 sniper course, you're actually, I mean, some of those shots feel like a decent distance away, and they're 80 meters or something. So it's
right.
But anyway, yeah. So we're working on a couple of BDXs, and for Intercept, the one I'm working on, I've got a camera set up in the scene right now.
Okay.
And every day or two, anytime we make a change, I go in there and snap a new shot from the exact same vantage point. So.
Oh, it's gonna be cool.
Yeah.
Wait
So
to see this.
When it's all said and done, you're gonna see how the white box has changed, and then you're gonna see how it changes as art gets their hands on it daily. So I think I'm looking forward to seeing how that turns out.
Well, maybe we should, let's talk a little bit about this new BDX. So,
okay.
Well, I mean, like, right now we're getting into, like, that early feel of it, so we might not remember some of these things, but, like, right now, like, one of the things I love about it is we've got a lot of these, like, broken building pieces that it's just kind of, like, I mean, white boxed out. It feels like you're walking around, like, this broken down castle, and around every corner, and, like, sometimes you can get kind of, it's a little mazy. Like, you can get a little lost in there, but it's really cool.
It's funny to me because you always say that. I'm glad it has that feel. The setups inside the rooms aren't actually super complicated.
They really are.
There's a few walls here and there and a couple of corners and things like that. But yeah, you can get that because like the three central buildings are more of like ruins of buildings.
Right.
And so it does have that feel. We're going for a little more older European style village. So you're actually seeing smaller ceiling heights on the floors and things like that too, so it feels a little more cramped. With a lot of these ruined buildings, you also have half walls and roofs blown off and things like that.
So I'm going to go ahead and assume that this is continuing on the trend of not being a training map.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
Not being a training map.
Glad to hear.
I would be shocked if you ever see another training map. So.
Oh really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in fact, there talk about how we can maybe go back on some of the older maps and make them not feel training. Like even Hospital is a good example, right? It has a look and feel of a non-training map.
Yeah.
But then you have a lot of signage like, hey, this is Route A, this is Route B, this is Route C, or hey, extract out here. It would be easy to go in there and rip some of that stuff out and, for lack of a better term, war the place up a little bit and maybe get more of a real setting feel out of that at some point.
Gotcha. So going back to this BDX map, obviously we've hinted at it kind of being in a broken down castle. When you when you talk about BDX, you've got 6-on-6 right now. You said this could go up to 8. Is this the case moving forward with the more BDX maps to give them that more spacious feeling? Because we've played some BDX maps, and I was actually in there with Grub the other day, kind of play testing one that we found I wouldn't really call it a bug, but we found a spot where you can immediately get killed from spawn just because it's so small. And is this something that we're going to kind of move away from, these really, really tight maps? Obviously still keep it small, but give the players some ability to maneuver around some?
Yeah, and I don't know if it's necessarily about making it feel more spacious necessarily. I mean, you could still, if we wanted to take an approach where the map's still very, cramped and tight, we could do that. It's more about the play space as a whole being a bit bigger, giving the players a few more options. So one thing I was sort of noticing in feedback, and I tried to address it a bit when creating Redline, was time to initial contact, right? There are some BDXs right now, like Lockdown, for example, 5 seconds you can be in a firefight. Try to slow that down a little bit. Try to get the players thinking a little bit. Give them choices. Which way do we want to go? How many people do we want to send this way or that way? Let's move up. Let's maybe be a little bit cautious initially. Or, maybe we move up pretty quickly, but we know once we get to this point or this corner, we either need to hold this line or we need to just, they're waiting for us on that other side. So, yeah, I think just giving the players room to think and breathe a little bit, especially early on, and then giving them options once combat stuff starts going on. I was actually looking at some heat maps and some game stat stuff from a playtest on the Intercept the other day, and combat felt very fluid. You would see 3 or 4 people come into an area and start, kind of fighting it out, and maybe one guy would go down, and then the other 3 would kind of try to break off and go for a flank, or maybe it would kind of roll into this next ruined building, so it's not as much static. You've got options whenever you get into those firefights.
And the thing is, like, this thinking, as far as the level designers are concerned, is like it really synergizes well with how we want to move forward with the game in terms of we want to bring you like maybe like some sort of fire team organizational tool, or maybe some sort of mini map tool to help you kind of plan routes and stuff, and say, okay, we're going to send 2 people here, 3 people there. And this kind of level design is really plays well. And the thing is, like, this thinking, as far as the level designers are concerned, is like it really synergizes well with how we want to move forward with the game in terms of we want to bring you like maybe like some sort of fire team organizational tool, or maybe some sort of mini map tool to help you kind of plan routes and stuff, and say, okay, we're going to send 2 people here, 3 people there. And this kind of level design is really plays well into that.
Another thing is we got the M24 coming out. We definitely want to support that thing, especially with limited roles.
Right.
There will be plenty of BDXs you open up where you can't use the M24 because it would just be silly. Like, you're not going to get an M24 on lockdown. It's just not happening. It's a powerful weapon. We want to support it. So with these new maps coming out, we want to make sure you have the space for that.
Right. And that's a big concern, man. That's I think a lot of people haven't really had a chance to voice their opinion because they haven't got to see it. But as a player myself, I'm really concerned about having that M24 and then getting in a firefight and not being able to be as good as Delta Kilo and no scope somebody through a building or whatever. To add in that sense of just because I'm a little closer, I'm not out of luck.
Sure. Sorry if there's any background noise. They're doing a address system check.
Yes, we heard that.
It's working, by the way.
Yeah. It's working, and they will probably test another 25 times. So, on Intercept, right? It's still, it's a BDX, right? So it's not going to be huge, but there are a couple of spots if you can go to that you have sightlines across 3/4 of the map, so we give you room to use that M24 there. At the same time, there are plenty of ruined buildings that you can take your M4 with and kind of weave in and out to avoid those sightlines. There's also a couple of like buildings you can move through to get up close to that M24 to try to counteract that and take him out, so that those sightlines are covered and now free for your team to move across.
We also, we've talked about, and we've talked about interior spaces before, and I think that the charm of the ruins is that it has that feel of like an interior, because it used to be one, but it also has like the openness of just
right, because it's broken.
Yeah, right. And so like you're able to like grenades aren't an invalid option.
We do counteract that a little bit, but yeah, certainly it's
So you still have that feel of being able to go into room by room, but it's still visually open enough for you to kind of see more than just the room that you're in.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well.
Lastly, just to cap that off there.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Like, this is kind of the early stages. This thing might end up being just like a bunch of houses by the end of the thing. We've had more drastic changes to other maps, so it's gonna be interesting to see how this thing evolves, and maybe we can keep talking about it.
Yeah.
I definitely want to keep.
Just don't mess the netcode up.
Definitely. Yeah, we'll try to keep people more up to date on the stuff we're working on right now. And honestly, I would love to get it out there and with more hands-on earlier on. So that we have time to do some more stuff to it. We've gotten out to the betas. We've been playing it here, and we've gotten a lot of good feedback. And as you will see, as these progress cam shots show, the core of the map has stayed pretty consistent, but a lot of the key spots on the outskirts of the map have changed considerably just over the last couple of weeks, just based off of feedback. A lot of people early on were saying, I'd really like to have a little more verticality in some of these buildings and the play spaces.
That's a big trend right now, guys. Is add that verticality.
We've added that, and we've given it more of that feel. So it's just the more eyes we can get on it early, in my opinion, the better. We can start gathering that. I think BC Pool was mentioning he linked a Counter-Strike article in
yes.
in the forum.
Looking at that right now.
Really, if you look at that whole post, right? If you look at the very first couple of sentences, that map was fully released and then over the course of 4 or 5 months had 7 updates. So a lot of the things they were doing there was just watching people play and listening to people and gathering their feedback and making those changes. So the more feedback you can get, especially earlier on, the better off you're going to be in those situations.
Okay. I've got another question. I think we've got time for a couple more, I think, judging by my clock here. But
I'm getting kind of hungry.
What do you guys got to go to the mess hall? Come on, man.
Grub the,
Yeah.
grub the,
They just give us
eat.
MREs. We don't
Yeah,
have
right.
to leave.
Yeah.
I eat
Don't-
rocks. I don't know what you guys
What do you here?
Yeah, you gotta need that.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, so one of these questions, I'm gonna get his name right this time because I got schooled on it last time. But Rampage, he's asked. He asked a bunch of good questions. I've studied.
I thought you said Wolverine earlier, like LOL Vereen. I was like, wow, what an awesome name.
Use that next time I play with them.
Yeah, right. He wants to know. Are there any plans for more complex objectives? Maps like Pipeline were so popular because they provided a great balance of variety in offensive and defensive strategies. Going forward, I know we talked about VIP kind of making a return at some point in time. But when you're designing these maps, is there a point where you're like, this would make a cool objective that we don't currently have? Like,
Sure. We talk about it fairly often. Complex objectives. We want to do more with objectives, definitely. One of the big things we run into if you start getting too complex with objectives is handling it on the HUD. How do we convey what you're supposed to be doing to players clearly, especially when you have multiple spots you can go to, and then that's going to lead to other things. But yeah, we toss out things like that all the time.
Press J for journal, of course.
We talk about VIP a lot. We've actually considered putting more text on screen instead of just having icons, right? If we went that approach, we'd say, hey, no, literally, your objective is like a sentence long. Really what we're focusing on right now, we're kind of getting some strike teams together. Like, I think some people have mentioned on the forums before, not the idea of maps with objectives, but missions, right? The map itself feels like a mission. We want to go more towards that route. It really... giving context. So there's context behind the insertion into the map. Things are happening when you're completing objectives.
Especially since we're getting away from.
Yes, especially since we're going towards more realistic maps now.
Well, that's
so
great to hear.
Yeah, so like planning C4 on like the server room in Redline, right? It would be super awesome if it was more than that little puff of fire, right? I mean, you want to see explosions there. You want to see effects that you're causing.
The artists have been asking for, if you're standing next to that bomb, that you ragdoll away from that somewhere.
It's such a good sounding explosion, and then you're.
I know. But yeah, that's something we're looking at very seriously right now. First things first, let's get more context in there. We're constantly talking about other things we can do. We kind of view our objectives right now as a toolbox,
right?
Especially if you have used the editor in any way, shape, or form, you see that you can technically string them together in any way you want to. So we think of it kind of like a toolbox that we can kind of use to assemble more things. We would like to. We don't want to have to redo everything in that realm, so we would like to find things that we can leverage what we have and maybe build things out in the future. But there are a lot of considerations there. It's not just getting them in and working. We can do that fairly easily. It's communication that's really the biggest stumbling block.
As we improve our communication tools, like we've been saying we want to do, I mean, like I think more of the complicated objectives probably become more possible. But again, it's like
Tosh really wants to say.
No, that's okay.
Let him loose.
Okay, I've been nice.
No, wait. If you're gonna end this sentence with "we gotta go," then we're gonna skip you.
I'm gonna start it.
Okay. I do have one more topic I want to cover in a little bit.
Okay. But like Roster was saying about missions, not maps.
Yes.
We have this wonderful world that we're not really touching. We look at it a lot, but we have a comic series.
Yeah. Yes.
How many people even know we have a comic series? But we have this great world and these great missions and stuff that are happening there. That even if we don't like direct copy and paste from the comic, we have a wonderful team, and this is all part of our same studio that are crafting these beautiful stories, and that we really want to work with to make these missions, these living worlds. Not just Three Kings.
And actually, Redline tied into one of the comics a bit as far as like in one of the comics, the soldiers are in a facility, and then they go down and find a train system that the Cervinian army is kind of using to move things around, and it's the same system that Redline ties into the tracks down there.
That makes sense. That's cool. Well, how about this? I mean, before we move off of that topic right there, how about anybody that's listening up until this point? If you made it this far into the podcast, which I hope everybody did, but if you comment below, because this is going to be on YouTube, if you comment below what your favorite part of the interview is, I will send you a series of the comics. As long as you live in the United States, I can't ship these internationally. But if you live in the United States, you want a copy of these comic books that these guys are talking about. They're really fun and they're really cool to look at and read and see some of the things that you see in the game in there. For example, there's the commander of the we'll just call them the bad guys. His posters all over the red line, yeah. And so is some of the propaganda from the flag and stuff like that. So if you guys would like to see that stuff,
you doing that daily. That is awesome of you to do, man.
We will we'll send out a copy. We'll give away a few. So just comment below what your favorite part of this interview or this podcast is, and we'll go ahead and send you guys some comics if you live in the United States. So sorry for cutting you off, but go ahead and continue.
Okay, so one thing I kind of want to give people an update on for this new release coming out. So we've been tracking stats and things like that, and one of the things we're seeing, Redline's not getting nearly as much play as we were expecting. As far as maps that are in rotation, it's lower. It's pretty low down.
It's because it's scary.
Well, and we're kind of surprised by it. Maybe I'm a little biased because was working on that map. But a lot of the people we were talking to here really enjoy playing that map. We loved playtesting it when we were working on it. It's still one still one of the ones we go to and play most often when we, have the time to go back to some of the other maps. We're not focusing on testing the new stuff. So we're a little concerned about that, and part of it, I think, is C4. A lot of people, for whatever reason, are really not resonating with the C4 as well as we were internally. One thing I am seeing, though, looking at the stats, is even though it's not in rotation, the extract version of C4 of Redline is getting quite a bit of play. It's getting like 200,000 rounds played in a week, and it's not even in rotation. So that tells me people out there are wanting to play it and setting up some servers to do so. Right. So for this release, we're actually pulling Redline C4 out of rotation. We're putting Redline EX into rotation, and so we're going to see if that increases interest, if it was an objective thing or if it's a map thing. And as much feedback as you want to give on that, please do so. So. And then, obviously, so Slums and Coldfront are both coming out with 2 objectives apiece. Both of them do have a C4 objective. So we're going to keep an eye on that as well. Because, if a lot of C4 is being played on those 2 maps, then maybe it was just the way it was set up in Redline that was the problem. And if, if they're not seeing a lot of play either, then maybe it's a problem with the game type in general that we need to address. But that's something we're keeping a close eye on right now, and we'll be continuing to monitor as we release new updates.
Yeah, Coldfront was designed for C4.
I like C4. I think C4 is a great game mode.
Designed for Occupy, and Coldfront has an EX?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. A good EX.
With this new game mode, is it going to be available on any other maps besides the new one?
Have we decided?
Not yet.
Yeah, no. Right. Well, so new game mode, right? We're talking about the take and hold stuff.
Yeah.
So the way we view game modes, it's not really a new game. I would argue that Harbor Assault is the same game mode. It just uses activate objectives. So really, take and hold is, and if you go into the mission editor right now, one of the game modes you set up is called take and hold because it's kind of, what we build around. So it's more, take and hold to us really more means both sides are trying to control these objectives, and you want to control them all to win. Whether that's using occupies, whether that's using activate objectives, what have you. So, and that kind of frees us up to, so say there's a map we create later on that uses 2 occupies and 1 activate. We can still call that take and hold. We still have a name for that. Everybody's still going to have a general sense of what we're talking about there going into it. And in fact, Slums was actually originally set up like that, if I recall correctly.
We had two activates and a take and hold.
But to focus on Occupy in particular, it's actually an objective type we've had for a long time. It was one of the first ones we actually play tested with when we were first getting things warmed up in pre-production. It's just, for whatever reason, we just kind of moved away from it for a while. We like where it's at right now. We like how it works with this take and hold game type. I would expect to see more of it coming in the future. We didn't retrofit it into any current maps, There are a few I could see us doing. I mean, Harbor Salt, we could put it in. Three Kings, we could put it in. I actually think it might work pretty well in Three Kings.
Yeah.
I would expect to see it more in the future. We really like that you can take objectives while still being active in the play space. You can still be fighting back and forth, holding people off while trying to take these objectives. You're active in the game while you're also taking them. We like that feel, and I would expect us to do more of it in the future.
It really creates a lot of
quieter too.
Yes. Oh, yeah. There's no. So when activates, right? You're activating an objective, and you hear the beeping.
Yeah.
There's no noise going on when you're taking these things. If you're in that area, taking it, and the enemy's not around to see it, then you're going to take it, and they'll notice once you've taken it, right? Because the icon will change and things like that. But yeah, you can totally stealth cap them if you move into an area without the other team knowing.
And with tactical movement mode, that makes sneaking around.
I'm so excited for that.
Yeah.
I would say that even though the system is very similar to an activate, the gameplay is much different.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it feels better.
In-house, like we get a lot of objective play with that type. I mean, like C4 and EX, it's about the same as you might get on pubs.
Sure.
In-house,
Yeah.
But like as far as Occupy, like that's I'd say that's more commonly the way it gets won.
Yeah. Well,
compared to just killing.
Particularly with that setup, if you can get the numbers advantage, right? It's almost easier to go through and just start taking those and pushing, really putting the pressure on that enemy because there's less of them to take these objectives back, and so it's going to be tougher for them to keep up. So you can start putting pressure by taking some others, force them to come out, and then you have enough men to defend the other objectives still, so you can kind of get them in some really rough positions and use those numbers to your advantage.
It feels sometimes like a base race and like a MOBA or something like that.
Yeah.
Like you know it's going down, and you know that you're also capturing the objective, but you have to kind of wait and see who's really ahead.
Yeah, it gets really interesting, especially if you're down like 2-on-2 or 3-on-3, because we have an odd number of these objectives, so you need to have two, and the other team needs to have to win. So you're constantly moving and trying to take them, but if you're moving and then they're moving, you're not sure who's going to get to that other one first because there's not that noise to indicate. So there's some very tense moments. Are we going to take this one before they take that one?
Yeah, so developing rotation seems to be something that's going to come into play, which I think the competition players will like. That kind of adds into their strategy kind of toolbox when it comes to maps and game modes like that. So that's really cool.
I'm gonna be the party pooper. We've got to go ahead and stop this one.
I'm
It's
so
run long.
hungry. I am so hungry.
Did you have
Save something for next week, man.
Hungry for competition.
Yeah, right. Well, I know we cut you off before you could finish your last point. Did you want to clear that up before we leave, or you want to handle that next time? Okay.
Yeah, that was me. That was talking about the red line changes and things like that.
Perfect.
Good.
All right, good deal. Well, thank you guys so much for week 2's podcast. We really enjoyed having the map guys in here talking about maps today, and looking forward to next week, guys. So, Grubbs, Tots, always a pleasure. Thank you, Waffle and Rasta for coming in and talking with us, man.
My pleasure.
Always fun, guys. So we will see you guys next time from Frag Nation, everybody at America's Army. You guys have a great week.